Hello, good morning. Welcome everyone to supporting HDRs in their internships. My name is Susan Schlinker and I'm one of the HDR industry engagement consultants in the graduate research, education and development team at QUT. I'm thrilled today to be joined by Professor Alexander Paz, who is from the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering, and he's also the chair of TMR. And so we'll be hearing from Alex a little bit later in the workshop about his amazing HDR internship academic mentoring experience. And we've also got Ivy Chen here from the GRED team. She is, I think, the most important person of the GRED team. It's the glue that keeps us all together and running efficiently. So Ivy will be putting some links into the chat for you as we go through the workshop. So feel free to copy and paste those. And then, as I said, I'll be sending out the resources at the end of the workshop as well. Before we dive into the content, I would also really like to warmly acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara as the First Nations owners of the lands where QUT now stands. We pay respects to the elders, laws, customs, and creation spirits, recognizing that these lands have always been places of teaching, research, and learning. And QUT acknowledges the important role that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within the QUT community. And also, I would like to extend my personal acknowledgement if you are zooming in to anywhere else, from anywhere else in Australia. I would like to extend my acknowledgement of the traditional owners of the lands that you are zooming in from today as well. Okay, so a little bit of background. If you've not heard about GRED before, we are the Graduate Research, Education and Development team. So we provide optional training and development for HDR students. And our training and development program supports 12 different skills in advance, lead and engage. So I sit very much in the engage suite of GRED offerings. But our team really has two main objectives, which is to help HDRs complete their thesis. And this is primarily done through our academic writing support team, Tasha and Kerry, and then also equipping HDRs for life after their degree. So that's why industry engagement really sits in that second objective in the engage side. And around 60% of PhD graduates will go on to have careers in industry. So HDR internships have never been more important to be able to equip HDR students with the skills and also demonstrable evidence that they can then point to on their CV when they're going for future job interviews for employment with industry post-graduation. So today, what we're going to cover is what a HDR internship is, the RTP funding changes around HDR internships, the benefits of being an academic mentor and the role of academic mentor. We're going to hear from previous academic mentors, including Alex, and I've also got a little video coming up on the next slide from senior lecturer TJ Thompson from the School of Communication, who has co-academic mentored before. And then I've got some HDR internship news, some exciting new things that are happening in the HDR internship space. And then we'll have lots of time at the end for questions and answers. So feel free to pop your questions into the chat as we go through, or you're also welcome to save your questions until the end. So one thing I wanted to share with you before we start is this video from senior lecturer Dr. TJ Thompson, who has annually been co-mentoring an internship on science communication with the Office of the Queensland Chief Scientist. And we're going to hear from Alex later about what it's like being a sole academic mentor, but I thought this was a really unique experience that I wanted to share with you around co-mentoring. So I'll play that now for you.
Hello, everyone. My name is TJ Thompson from the School of Communication. It's great to be here with you all. I'd like to share 7 lightning-fast reflections on HDR internship co-mentorship. So first reason, having a co-mentor to be able to bounce ideas off of was very helpful. People are messy sometimes. Oftentimes there's complex information and interactions that have to be had, and having someone else to be able to bounce ideas off of and strategize with can be quite helpful. Second, I would say that we were able to accomplish a more rich and appropriately scaled set of activities by working together. Both me and my partner academic partner, where we're looking at timelines, activities, and being able to form those up together was helpful to get a little bit more nuance and richness into what we're hoping our intern could be able to accomplish in our set time frame. A third reason I'd say is that we had the ability to share the workload a little bit more equitably, a little bit more flexibly as needed with responding to weekly reflections, and also potentially have deeper responses to these reflections based on our complementary sets of experiences and skill sets. Fourth reason, I'd say there was more continuity and flexibility built into the role when you have two academic co-mentors. For example, if someone's on sick leave or cares leave, or there's other unforeseen circumstances that arise, one mentor can kind of take over and help ensure that continuity and that presence is throughout the internship when another person has to pop off for whatever reason. Fifth reason, more flexibility to learn from and interact with the mentor's personality and communication style if you think suits the student best. So if some folks, for whatever reason, have folks who they get along with a little bit better naturally. And so having two different people to work with and to chat with and to learn from, you kind of get a little bit more opportunity to choose who you want to engage with, dialogue with. That can be a helpful experience for the mentor and the mentee alike. Sixth reason, I would say, the mentee, the HDR student, really, I think, gets a lot of benefit from having two mentors, two sets of eyes on things, two networks. We were both sending her conferences that we saw that were relevant to her interests, funding opportunities, publishing opportunities, all these things we had in our own network, so we could then share with her. She gets double the benefit, double the value of having two of us in her life for these 6 months or so. And then seventh and finally, it really was also helpful to be able to learn from my co-academic mentor about her approach, her style of mentoring, how she interacted with the intern. That was helpful for me as well, my own practice, my own mentoring experience as well. So there's 7 lightning fast reflections for you. I would highly encourage you all to take advantage of the mentorship opportunity if it comes along. Ski and Susan and the team are absolutely phenomenal to work with. So patient, so flexible, so communicative. Absolutely 10 out of 10 would recommend.
Okay, so that's a little bit of an introduction for you to the HDR internship mentoring. But now I'd like to take you through some of the foundation of what a HDR internship is. And it can be 3 to 6 months in length, really depending on the industry partner and what their needs are from the internship project. So the parties that are involved in a HDR internship are the HDR student, the academic mentor, which can be the student supervisor, or it can be another QUT academic staff member who has expertise relevant to the HDR internship project. Obviously the industry partner themselves, and then GRED. So when it's coming through the QT HDR internship program, I'm your main contact for HDR internship facilitation. So please feel free to reach out with me and I will be able to do the contract management and all of the facilitation side for you. So it is a separate project from the HDR students' thesis research and a little bit different to undergraduate work integrated learning where the students own the IP. In the HDR internship program, the industry partner owns the IP for the internship project. When the student is undertaking the HDR internship during candidature, their candidature is paused and they are moved from their thesis unit and enrolled into IFN 004, which is the HDR internship shell unit. Then their milestones are moved back at the completion of the internship by the time length of the internship. So if it's a 3-month internship, their milestones get moved back by 3 months. And this is just so that they don't have to juggle their HDR commitments and the internship at the same time. We really want them to have a deep dive and a really committed experience to the internship project. So their scholarship is also paused when their candidature is paused, but the industry provides funding to QUT, which QUT then provides to the student in the form of a fortnightly stipend throughout the internship. And if it's an internal internship, we can just do a journal transfer of those funds. And internships can also be undertaken when the students are under examination. And the eligibility criteria is on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. So what you'll notice that all of the degrees have in common is a minimum of 6 months full-time equivalent study. And then IF49 students also need to successfully complete stage 2, IF80 and KK59 students a research project proposal, and ED11 students a work in progress document. There's a few different internship types. So through the QT HDR internship model, we really want to emphasize that HDR students self-sourcing their own opportunity is the preferred way to go. I'll be real with you for a second. There are, at any one point in time, there's about 2,500 HDR students and there's one of me. So I'm never going to be able to find an opportunity for every single HDR student. But what I really see my role as doing is being able to equip and empower HDR students with the resources to be able to network and to reach out to industry partners so that they're able to find their own opportunity. And you as their supervisor is absolutely critical to that discussion as well, because you may already have industry partners in your network that you may be able to facilitate an introduction to for your HDR student. Then we also have external internships where the industry partner is invoiced, and we have internal internships where we do a journal transfer. So if there is a larger collaboration happening at QT and you would like to plug students into that collaboration for an internship project, we can certainly do that. And then APR Intern, which is an approved third-party provider of HDR internship opportunities at QT. We can also facilitate internships through them as well. So there were some pretty big changes to the HDR internship landscape in 2021 when the federal government announced changes to the RTP funding program, where a weighting of 2.0 is incorporated to HDR completions just for PhD completions. And so the funding of that was partially for 2022 completions, but it's fully allocated from this year, 2023 onwards. So now the eligibility criteria for this additional RTP funding is on the screen. There's 3 types of criteria. The first one is that the internship must be at least 3 months in length, a minimum of 60 business days, which is fine. That's what our program was doing before. The second criteria is that it must be relevant to the student's research topic. And we're quite lucky because the definition of relevant is very broad. It can just be in the application of broad HDR skill application. And then criteria 3, so this is the trickiest one out of the trio, that the internship must be agreed in written form within 18 months of the PhD student's full-time commencement, or 36 months if they are a part-time student. So our program still remains open to all HDR students at any time during their candidature or under examination. We are very keen to keep it open because we can see the benefits of it. However, we are hoping to capture more internships which meet these criteria so that QUT can qualify for that additional RTP funding. And that equates to somewhere between $15,000 to $30,000 additional funding. And that's based off projection modeling from the Graduate Research Centre. So we do have a new process that we implemented last year called Intention of Internship. If you have any industry partners in your network who would be interested in hosting a HDR internship, please let us know. And the great thing is we don't need to formalize it with an internship agreement within the first 18 months, but we do need to get something in writing, which can be an email between QT, the student, and the industry partner, or the Intention of Internship template, which I can certainly email you if you would like. And it's just very broad, saying us as this industry partner intends on hosting this student for a period of 3 months. It'll be roughly this time. Here's a rough overview of the project. And so that will then help us meet that RTP funding eligibility criteria. There's a couple of other ways that we can meet the funding criteria as well, obviously through PhD scholarship agreements, and also if the student is employed with an industry partner. So if you we can capture anything that is centrally collected through the Graduate Research Centre. But if you know of anything else happening with your students, they're either employed or they've undertaken an internship outside of the QUT HDR internship program, please feel free to get in touch. My colleague Catherine Theobald manages the data and government reporting side of HDR internships, and we'd love that information so that we can report on it to the government and be eligible for more RTP funding. So that's a little background on HDR internships. And now I'd love to move into the academic mentor side of how you can support HDR internships and students while they're on internship. So some of the benefits for you as an academic staff member in being an academic mentor are $1,000 into your research account at the completion of the internship. You also have the full internship project income recorded as external income on your RAD profile. So I mentioned that industry partner provide funding for HDR internships. The minimum is $10,000 for a 3-month internship. So you have that full $10,000 that's recorded on your RAD profile. It's also a way for you to evidence for research or leadership and engagement activity within the academic career framework. And it can develop and enhance your industry connections. And it could also assist with funding competitiveness, contributing to your ARC linkage track record. Now, the role of academic mentor itself is really to assist students through the internship. So a little bit later in the workshop, I'm going to give you a breakdown of the internship process and where the academic mentor would specifically provide assistance throughout that process. But this is just an overview to get you started. So it's to assist students to source internship opportunities, as I mentioned before. If you have any industry partners in your network, it would be wonderful if you could connect your HDR students with them. But when we have an industry partner reach out to me and say, hey, I would like to host a HDR intern for this specific project, I ask the industry partner to complete an expression of interest form. So again, I don't have experience in all different disciplines across QT. What a genius one would have to be to do that. So this is why I reach out to academic mentors for support, so that I can get your academic expertise to vet the proposed internship project that the industry partner is suggesting. And you can let me know if you think it's feasible and reasonable within the time frame. We also ask for your assistance when you're an academic mentor to approve the proposed internship activities at the time that we do the internship agreement. And this is just because we want to set the students up for success. So we want to make sure that all of the activities the industry partner is expecting the student to complete, again, are feasible and reasonable within the time frame of the project. We recommend that you meet with the student before the project commences, especially if it's a student that you're not currently supervising, and then support the student as required throughout the internship. Now, this is very broad, I know, and later in the workshop, I've got some specific examples for you about what support as required might entail. You'll also receive weekly reflective journal entries from your students, and this is a way for them to let you know what they've been doing, if they've encountered any challenges, if they need any guidance to make decisions for the projects, and you're able to respond and interact with that. We then ask that you attend the mid and the final internship presentations. So as I mentioned, the students are enrolled in IFN 004, which is the HDR internship shell unit. So the mid and the final internship presentations are the assessment pieces for the unit, and we ask that you attend those, please. And then after the internship, we ask you to please complete the academic mentor post-internship survey. And I'll tell you a little bit later with my HDR internship news why that is more important than ever. But for right now, I would like to give you a break from me and warmly introduce Professor Alexander Paz from the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering to talk about his academic mentor experiencing. I'm going to stop sharing, and Alex, feel free to share your slides.
Thank you, Susan. Good morning, everybody. Let me share my slides. All right, so I have prepared a few slides with information about my experience. I have prepared 3 examples. They are very similar, so I will go probably in a little bit more detail over the first example, and I will go faster on the second and third because it's almost identical. And the first one is a little bit the best example, or the one where we got the most results, so the most contributions. So this is a project for TMR. It is regarding mobility as a service. If you haven't heard about mobility as a service, it is basically a new platform that is under development in multiple places, multiple metropolitan areas throughout the world, to facilitate people to get access to all modes of transportation in a single application. And as you can imagine, agencies such as TMR are interested in this because it improves the quality of service and also helps with some negative externalities around transportation. The internship was 6 months. A PhD student from transportation engineering was helping us with this project during the internship. In this case, as well as the next 2 examples, the background of the student was very consistent with the projects, and that helped us with the success of the internships. So the student was working not on mobility as a service, but it has been working on travel behavior, and the core of this project was also travel behavior as regarding mobility as a service. So some of the outcomes that we got was analysis of data that TMR provided to us. We did the statistical analysis. We come up with insights from that analysis. We wrote a report together with TMR, and out of that report, we come up with a paper, which is also a book chapter that is currently under review. And the student was working for her thesis, was developing software to do the analysis, and we were able to add some capabilities to that software as part of this analysis. So the student benefit because she can also use that for her own thesis. And then we are currently in the negotiation of 2 relevant projects as part of this internship, but also, as you can imagine, is also part of long activities that we have been working with TMR regarding behavior in general, travel behavior. What else can I tell you? Well, for the student was able to interact closely with the client, with TMR, multiple ways, emails, meetings. She got direct feedback from TMR, and she's still getting, even though the internship is complete, she's still getting some feedback from TMR on multiple aspects, especially regarding future work that she's not going to be involved, but she's super curious about what we are planning to do. So we invite her to the meetings where we are negotiating the 2 projects that I just mentioned to you. I gave a lot of feedback to the student, especially before the meetings, on how to prepare the material that we were showing as progress, and also on how to deliver the reports. For a very simple example, I asked her to move to the appendix all the theory, all the mathematics, all the equations, and having the body of the document, mostly the analysis, the results, and the insights that were likely to be of interest for TMR. All right, the second project, it's for the Brisbane City Council. Also a PhD student from transportation engineering, 6 months internship. The student is working on signals with my colleague Chisbaskar, and we needed somebody to help us with bus priority, also using signals. So his thesis originally was not including priority, any type of priority. It was just signals, mostly RAM meters. And I didn't have somebody to help me with this project, so I talked to Achis and I offered this internship to his student. And the student has done a fantastic job. And now he has included this aspect of signals into his thesis, so that he can make things count more than once. Basically, everything from the internship goes to his thesis, so he benefits from the experience, from the time, the resources that he got. We got data, we got unique access to actual signal settings that otherwise we wouldn't have. It's not common to get that type of information, and now he has that, and he will benefit from that. Outcomes were very similar to the ones described before. We also worked on software scripts. We did analysis, we delivered a report. We don't have yet a paper. Eventually will happen, but we need more work. And given that the student has adopted this topic in his thesis, then of course that will help with the publication. And we are currently negotiating, not to, I just copy from the previous slide, one report, one project, future project with BCC as part of this internship. The last example is also a project for TMR. This is about safety. The project requires a strong background in statistics. So I talked to my colleague, Paul Corey from mathematical science, and he offered the internship to one of his students, 6 months internship, also very successful. We got data from TMR, we did the analysis, wrote the report, and currently negotiating one project, not two projects. Again, I copy pasted. One project with TMR to continue working in this subject. In this case, the student has not decided and is not going to most likely use outcomes from the internship in his thesis, but at some point we'll have a publication together. All right, so the level of involvement, Susan asked me to talk a little bit about this. Basically, the level I handle these projects very similar to the way that I handle masters or PhD, but obviously everything is compact. Everything is faster, and other than that, I met with the students regularly, or mostly once a week. Another difference is that they interact with the industry partner more often than otherwise. Sometimes they don't interact at all with industries partners, even if the industry partner is paying for the masters or the PhD. In these cases, they do. It's just a little bit more urgent for the industry partners in these three examples that I showed you to get results and to see how we are making progress. So level of involvement, relatively little, a little bit more intense than masters and PhD. And then again, for me, in the three cases, the success was because the students were working already in topics that were super relevant for the project. So that helped me a lot. I will recommend people to do your best to get that type of background. And I'm talking also regarding my clients, my industry partners, right? The different industry partners may be different, but in my case, it was critical. For students, I kind of already mentioned to you, they interact more with the industry partners. They get feedback from them. Sometimes the feedback is very little but important about the presentation of the information, about consistency, for example, consistency with the colors, consistency with the formatting. I give that type of feedback to students no matter what. You probably do the same thing, and it takes a lot of repetitions to get that clear. But when they hear from others, especially from the industry, they sort of realize that it's very important for everybody. So that type of feedback was very good. I was super happy that they get this very similar comments to the ones that I was giving them, because it make a difference, basically. For us, well, for me, it was an opportunity to handle needs for industry partners that I work on a regular basis with them, and they needed help. So it helped me to deliver quickly and effectively and attract additional resources and make things count more than once in almost every single case, because we got data, we got resources, we got information, and we use that in the students, in the two cases in the students' thesis. And now we are discussing future work with them. Experience working with GRED was fantastic. It's easy, not that much paperwork, very flexible with almost every single thing. I don't have any suggestion on how they can make it better or easier for us. I think it's wonderful the way it's working. Congratulations, very good job, Susan. And that's all what I have, I think. Oh, one last comment, sorry. It's that some people, and I have heard from colleagues and also from the students, may think that the students' graduation gets delayed because they have to put on pause their research, right, to work on the internship. And to some extent that's true, but at the same time, if the topics match, they can make things count more than once, as I have been explaining. And in my case, at least, every single student needs more time. Even without the internship, they need more time. And this is a mechanism also to get them a little bit more time, get them more experience, and get them opportunities to benefit from the internship and also make connections with the industry. So I think it's positive in every single sense. I am coming from a very different environment, and where I am coming from, there is no limit for the students to finish. And I that's the training that I got, and that's what I was doing before coming to QUT 4 years ago. And I kind of miss that. So the internship is, again, a little opportunity to, if needed, to provide more flexibility to the students to complete their studies. All right, that's all what I have. And I think the questions will be at the end.
Thank you so much, Alex. That was so valuable to hear your experience of different internship projects and your thoughts on the internship experience as well. I'm going to jump back to my slides now, and thank you, Alex. If you could hang around till the end for the Q&A session, that would be great. I'm sure we'll have some questions pop up for you at the end. But what I wanted to jump into now is what I promised earlier, which is just a little bit more detail for you about what's involved with applying for, when students are applying for a HDR internship and when they're self-sourcing an internship. So the process map that we have on the screen is the process that students go through when they're applying for an existing HDR internship opportunity. So for example, I recently had 3 with Navitas, which are an international education company that I had listed on the HDR internship IQ page. So if students had come across those, first of all, step 1 is that expression of, or step 0, I should say, is that expression of interest form that I mentioned earlier. So I reached out to Navitas and asked them to complete that expression of interest form for each of the 3 projects that they had for HDR internships. They sent it back to me. And that's when I reached out to academic mentors in the business school and said, could you have a look at these proposed projects? I just want to make sure that they're suitable to promote to the HDR cohort. So when I get projects back, I will reach out to you if I know that that's your area of expertise and ask you to have a look at it before I promote it. So it's up, students apply for it, then I do the internship eligibility checks, and then the students will have an interview with the industry partner if they're shortlisted. And then we participate in finalizing the internship agreement. So again, this is where I ask academic mentors for support. This is where the internship project is really detailed out in terms of the deliverables that are listed in the agreement. And again, I really ask for your help and expertise in just vetting those proposed internship activities to make sure that they're suitable and feasible for the student to complete in the internship time period. The student then completes the internship pre-requirements, and then they commence the internship. So it could be somewhere between a 3 to a 6 month project. So during that project, the student is submitting weekly reflections to you in their weekly reflection journal. So we ask that you read those and obviously provide them with any feedback and guidance as required. We recommend meeting with the students at least once a fortnight to touch base on the project. And during those meetings and those reflective journals, they might bring things up that they need assistance with. And I'll give you some examples of those in a couple of slides' time. We then have the mid and the final internship presentations. So these take somewhere between half an hour to an hour. They're normally by Zoom, or they can be in person if the industry partner is, relatively close by. And we ask that as mentor, you attend those and provide feedback on, obviously at the midpoint, how the student is going, what work is left to do for the remainder of the internship project, and any other feedback or guidance that you feel is relevant to provide to the student at that point in time. The student then completes their post-internship requirements, and then we have post-internship surveys for the industry partner, the student, and the academic mentor, and we ask you to please complete one of those, and then the student receives their HDR internship certificate. So that's for if they're applying for an existing opportunity, and I just wanted to show you a little bit of the difference if they are self-sourcing a HDR internship, and this is our preferred model of how HDR students can find an opportunity. It's ideal if you or the student can approach GRED and say, hey, we've got the student, we've got the industry partner, can you cook us up an internship agreement and make it happen? So in terms of self-sourcing for a HDR internship, it's up to the student to identify potential industry partners. And that's where you can really help as their supervisor or academic mentor, and perhaps introduce them to industry partners in your network that could be a relevant fit for them. We ask the students to form a relationship with the industry partner first, and our recommended model for doing this is setting up an informational interview with someone in that industry partner organization so that they can get to know the organization a little bit more, and the organization can get to know them and perhaps see the value that the student could contribute to the organization. So we ask them to form that relationship first, because it's nice to and more effective to have that background relationship before you just go asking for something. So then the student would pitch an internship to the industry partner once they've formed that relationship. And then the rest of the process is then the same as what I've already explained for the application process for existing HDR internship opportunities. And you can see the academic mentor involvement is the same from that point on in finalizing the internship agreement, supporting the student as required throughout the internship, attending the mid and the final internship presentations, and completing the post-internship survey. So a big part of the internship is supporting the HDRs as required. And I know this is really broad. So what could it mean potentially? It could mean managing their expectations about their role. We certainly have had students in the past who have thought that their position as intern is to go into an organization and almost provide a leadership role to them, which industry partners don't take very well to. So about speaking to the HDR student about the expectations around their role. And we certainly outline the HDR intern expectations in the pre-internship requirements as well, but they may just need a little bit of help. They may need assistance with communication and with collaboration. Perhaps they've not worked in a transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary environment before, and maybe they need some strategies to collaborate effectively. Or perhaps, and I was just sharing this with Alex before the workshop started, is we've had students go into internships before and they're so used to being in their research world with very niche and specific technical language and jargon. And in some instances, the industry partner doesn't communicate on that level. And so you may need to assist your HDR intern with understanding research communication skills for a general audience. Obviously, providing project guidance. Sometimes students might approach you and say, hey, I think there's this option I could go with, or this option I could go with, and they'll both achieve the same outcome, but in different ways. Which way do you think would be more beneficial for me to take? And also ensuring that the industry partner maintains the parameter of the internship. Sometimes industry partners can get a little bit cheeky and ask for more than what is listed in the internship agreement. And so the QUT rule is if it's not listed in the agreement, the intern doesn't do it. So just to, but sometimes the interns feel obliged to do it because the industry partner has asked them, and they're absolutely not. So let me know if an industry partner is asking for more than what we've agreed to in the internship agreement. And sometimes it's helping them build their confidence. Sometimes I've seen HDR interns, they need to, especially when they've gone into government agencies, they've needed to communicate with internal and external stakeholders. And again, coming from their niche research world, which can be quite solo and individual, it can be, they can feel like they're thrown into the deep end. So helping them build their confidence. And of course, when they're out on internship, we ask that they do comply with the student code of conduct, but we also want to make sure that they're representing QUT well and not doing any QUT brand damage. So if there's any behavior that you see that you think isn't appropriate or isn't in alignment with student code of conduct, you can speak to them about that. And of course, you can let me know as well. And so I wanted to give you just a few examples of previous academic mentor support on internship. And this has come directly from those post-internship academic mentor surveys. So one example is continuing to clarify expectations around technical readiness of interns and continue to refine expectations of industry partners of what an intern will be able to do, keeping clear distinction between work integrated learning and normal employment, because I think occasionally industry partners can think that this is employment when it's not, it's an educational training experience. Another one is helping the student understand how long it may take to develop a bespoke internship. This particular one took 6 months, and the academic mentor and I were working together, communicating with the industry partner before we were able to facilitate the agreement and the student could commence. And then the last example I have is the student did not comprehend that working outside the contract stipulated times meant that he's not covered by QUT insurance. So he didn't quite understand the IP element of the project, and he wanted to keep continuing to give time and ideas to partners outside of the scope of the internship agreement contract. And the mentor helped the student be aware of these elements and act accordingly. So that's just a few specific examples for you. This is some of what the other academic mentors are saying, but I'm conscious of the time, and I want to make sure that we have time for questions. So what I want to do very briefly is, I might come back to this video if we have time, is just let you know that we also have testimonials available from the HDR internship industry partners. So you can see what other industry partners have said about the program. But I wanted to move into my HDR internship news, and I have 2 exciting updates to share with you. So Senior Deputy Vice Chancellor of Research, Christopher Barner-Kowalik, has very kindly offered some cash for 2 annual HDR Internship Awards. And we are having the inaugural HDR Internship Award ceremony at the QUT Graduate Research Student Showcase in September this year. The date is to be announced. I'm project manager for that showcase, so I will keep you updated on when that is to be announced. But all internships that have run from between August last year to August this year will be in consideration. And there's 2 awards that we have. $5,000 cash for the most outstanding HDR intern and $5,000 of research funding for the most outstanding academic mentor of a HDR internship. These awards are going to be continuing annually. So it's another incentive for you to be involved as academic mentor, and there's opportunity to get a really nice cash bonus into your account if you're chosen as the most outstanding academic mentor of an internship. How this is decided is the post-internship surveys. So as I mentioned before, there's one that goes to the student, one that goes to the industry partner, and one that goes to you as the mentor. So as a mentor, it's really critical that you provide feedback on the student so that we can take that into consideration for the student HDR Internship Award. And then the student and the industry partner will be providing feedback on you as the academic mentor. And that's how we will decide the most outstanding academic mentor of the year. I also wanted to let you know that Christopher Barnack-Wallach has also provided some fully funded internships for 2023. So my colleague Catherine Theobald, also in GRED, she is managing these. So what I'm aware of at this stage is that there will be 10. The internship projects need to meet certain criteria, which is to be announced. We'll be sending that out in a GRED newsletter coming up soon. Applications are to be made by academic staff for industry partners to work with, and we'll send out more details as soon as we have them for you. If you don't know, GRED also runs workshops for HDR students on preparing for HDR internships, whether they're applying for existing opportunities or they're self-sourcing their own opportunity. So these are the next workshops that are coming up, and you'll have the full list of training and workshops that you're very welcome to share with your students. The link will be in the resources that I send out later today. So before we move into Q&A, just give you a little bit of a wrap up from this session. Where to from here? It's a lot of information, I know, but I would recommend starting a conversation about HDR internships with your students and also with your industry connections to see if anyone is available to host an internship. When I have internship opportunities that I've sourced through business development, I'd love if you're available to mentor internships and help me vet projects as they come through. There's more info on being an academic mentor there. And again, you'll have the links when I send out the resources. And then look out for the HDR internship emails from GRED to promote the opportunities and the workshops to your students. And also please reach out to us if you have any employed students or students who have undertaken any industry activity that's outside of the QUT programs, because we may be able to report on that and we may be able to access additional RTP funding for QUT. And lastly, before we move into the Q&A session, Ivy is going to put a link into the chat now. I would love if you could complete a 1-minute quick anonymous survey. We love our feedback at GRED. I'm always looking at ways for making the workshops and the sessions more informative and enjoyable. So let me know what if you have any constructive feedback, but I'd also love to know what you thought worked well. So that's in the chat for you now. And I'd love to open the floor to questions. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to have a really quick look through the chat to see if any questions have come through. Okay, so one from Caroline, which is, how does this work with embedded internships where the internship is part of the thesis research? Yes. Caroline, is that in regards to RTP funding, the additional RTP funding?
Sure, why not? Because we've got, and I've asked the same question, but slightly differently. We can't pause the scholarship. That's the only thing. These have got to be embedded within the theme of the PhD. They'll contribute to the PhD work. They're funded by one industry partner, but they're to work with another. So Meat and Livestock Australia are basically giving each student 35,000 as a scholarship top up over 3.5 years, and 30,000 in operating. And they'll be embedded either in HDRF, which is a sequencing company, or with one of the biggest pasture seed company in Australia, New Zealand. But we can't stop the PhD. The work they will be doing with their partners will actually contribute towards the progress of their PhD.
Yep.
Can we do that under this scheme?
Yes, great question. And I think you used the key word, which is embedded. So if we think about the QUT HDR internship program as standalone internships, so it's for students who are already here and perhaps don't have any industry engagement activity in their PhD scholarship agreement and then looking for an opportunity. Whereas what you have are students who have embedded industry activity in their scholarship as part of their thesis. Yeah. So that activity is centrally captured by the Graduate Research Centre, and we report on that for our end of year PhD completions to the government already. So you don't need to worry about for embedded internships needing to pause or to come to GRED for an additional agreement. All of that activity, when it's already in that PhD scholarship agreement, it's already agreed upon. So there's nothing further that we need to do. But if you do have any students that don't have something like that and are looking for an industry engagement opportunity, then we would use the normal mechanisms of what we call standalone internships.
Yeah. Does it count towards the additional funding though?
It does, yes, because the great thing about embedded activity when it's listed in the PhD agreement from the start is that it meets that very tricky criteria 3, which is to have it in written agreement by the first 18 months. So it's actually, I think, the most sensical way to go about making sure that we're meeting that criteria.
Yep, I didn't want to chuck out a perfectly good industry scholarship that we've been working on for the last, oh, God knows how many months to nail down from this.
No, please don't.
Because we couldn't, we couldn't pause the scholarship. All right,
please,
that sounds,
please don't.
No, that sounds really sweet. Good, I'm happy.
Okay, that's great. And then I can see, Caroline, you had another question in the chat. Which was...
same.
Oh, same. Okay. All right, I'll ignore that one. And then Janice has asked, how much do the HDR interns get paid for their 3 months? Is this a standard rate or negotiable with the industry partner? Great question, Janice. So the base rate that we ask industry partners to fund for a 3-month internship is $10,000. And obviously that price goes up if it's a 4, 5, or 6-month internship. So that is negotiable though. And I certainly feel from a GRED perspective, who am I to put a cap on it? And we've had students who have received funding in the realms of $26,000 or $30,000 before for a 3-month internship. I'm not going to say no, as long as it meets the minimum funding requirement of $10,000, anything above that is fine. It is really up to you as an academic mentor to negotiate that with the industry partner, though, if you would like them to provide additional funding. And the reason why we chose $10,000 is that it's quite comparable to their normal scholarship rate. And we just really want them to be able to cover their living expenses while they're undertaking an internship. In 2021, I set up something called the HDR Internship Community of Practice, and we've got 33 universities from around Australia who participate in that. And a lot of universities don't have, or they don't ask industry for funding. They don't have a mechanism to provide students with any level of financial support while they're undertaking an internship. The students need to take a leave of absence, and it's up to them to fund their time while they're doing the internship. So we just want to make sure, and I think it's a great system at QUT to make sure that they're still able to cover their living expenses. Susan, you've got a question.
Thanks very much, Susan. Really, I've learned a few things, which is great. I have a question for Alex, if I may, and it's around IP. You mentioned that some of the internships that you mentored used their internship information in their thesis, and then they're going to be publishing with that. I just wondered, did you get stuck in any tricky IP sort of scenarios? You had to have some sort of IP deed or sharing or some sort of negotiation in place if the student then wants to use the information from their internship, because I understand that the industry owns the IP. So I just thought maybe that would be nice to get some clarification.
Alex, can I share one thing before? Okay. So Alex's internships are what we've called internal internships. So in this instance, QT is the host because it's an already existing collaboration with TMR. So the students need to sign a deed poll when they undertake an internship. And in this instance, QT was assigned the IP. So that's why the students were able to use it. But if it's an external internship, yes, the external industry partner is assigned the
that
IP.
explains it. I just thought that.
Sorry, Alex, I just want to.
No problem. But I can also add, in my case, both with TMR and Brisbane City Council, in general, they have no issues with IP. You know, our lawyers actually are the ones who want to make a big deal about IP, but they and our team, we are not really that worried into the IP issue, and we have other agreements with the two agencies beyond the internship, where also IP is not a problem.
Yeah, that's nice. That's great that you've got that relationship. Can I just, before, I know Janice has a question. Sorry, Janice. I just want a quick follow-up one. It's a little bit different, Susan. I know it's about when you mentioned on the slide that if they've undertaken research with an industry partner, you might be able to retro back and say that was an internship. How do you then justify that it's an educational learning activity? So how do you evidence that it was an educational learning activity and not just a paid research role?
At this point in time, we're actually quite lucky because the Department of Education, Skills and Employment haven't really given us many specific guidelines. And so until one university gets audited and then we all learn from that experience, it's really up to us. And so to be able to report on that. So what our priority is to match the criteria. So it's more that criteria too, is it relevant to the area of research? And it's up to QT to say, yes, it is relevant. So that's what we're doing at this point in time when it comes to government reporting.
Yeah, good. It could get tricky, I guess. That's all.
It could get tricky, but we're in a new phase, and I think things will change later down the track as unis get audited and we learn what is and isn't out of scope. But we're going for all of it at the moment. Why not?
Seems smart.
So Janice, did you have a question? I can see you put another one in the chat, or did you have an additional one to that?
No, just the one that's in the chat, that just confirming they can do this while they're out for examination.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
At that point, their scholarship ends anyway, so it's not pausing their scholarship, so it's giving them top up in that period.
Exactly.
They often don't have income while they're waiting for examination to come back. And then I have students on ARC PhD scholarships. Does that confuse things?
So that I would recommend reaching out to my colleague, Catherine Theobald. Our sort of stance is, so I'm the main contact for business development with internships, but she's looking after the government reporting side of things. And I would recommend sending her the documentation. She can have a look at it. If it's something that we can count, great, we'll count it. If not, we did have an instance last year where, because a lot of these agreements were put in place, obviously, before the government announced the RTP funding changes. And so now I know the Office of Research Services, they have standard text in the agreements that is then, meeting the requirements for future PhD scholarship agreements. But on occasion, we've had to ask the industry partner for just an additional, like a supplementary letter, just to confirm, because sometimes, especially with linkages, they're established before the student is identified, and we just need to confirm that it was a specific student who was working with them. So I would say if you could reach out to Catherine, have a chat about those sort of nuanced examples, and she can assess and let you know if there's anything else that needs to be supplementary for that.
Thank you.
And Deb, you had a question in there. If we're currently applying for a linkage and negotiating a cash match from industry partners, can we have that match to be used for an internship? I love that I've come across a question that I've never been asked before, Deb. I don't have an answer for you for that one. I would think that that's possibly more an Office of Research Services question in terms of the agreement. So Amanda Wilson, who's the business development for industry manager in ORS, she's my contact when we've been making sure that internships, I think she would have a much better understanding of the framework of a linkage agreement and be able to tell you if that's within scope of if it's plausible or not.
Okay. Cool. I'll check with Amanda then. Thank you.
Okay, no worries. So I do realize it's after 11, but did anyone else have any other last minute questions that they would like to ask? No? Okay, well, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to Alex for coming along and presenting about his experience today. Thank you.
Happy to help.
And thank you everyone for attending. Thank you for your support of the HDR internship program. And if you think of any questions after the workshop, just please feel free to send us an email at hdr.intern@qut.edu.au and we'll be happy to help out.
Thank
See you
you.
later. Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.